Welcome to the first episode of Track Attack. I'm your host, Colin Casey, and together we're going to present to you the hottest new automotive entertainment show out there. This is Track Attack. After more than 20 years of being absent, the Toyota Supra is back. And it's faster and more furious than ever. Or at least this one is. The car stays true to its roots with a highly tunable turbo inline-six engine. In stock form, Toyota claims it produces 335 horsepower. And with a starting price of $68,000, this makes a return into a very competitive market segment. Now, first things first, let's just get this out of the way. This is not a Toyota. It is a BMW. The engine, the transmission, the chassis, pretty much everything else in this car is BMW. There's very few actual Toyota components in this car. So that being said, does that make it any less of a Toyota or even a Supra for that matter? In my opinion, yes. This is a BMW. I'm sorry. It's not a Toyota in my mind. Sure, it's badged as one. Doesn't matter. But the more important question is, does that make it any less of a sports car? No. So manufacturers doing joint ventures like this is nothing new. This has been going on in the corporate world for decades. Usually it's not quite this blatant and in your face, but it's nothing new. Now, sports cars are obviously good for generating passion amongst your customers and creating brand awareness. But obviously, if you can't pay the bills, you can't make sports cars. So I guess it makes sense with those joint ventures. So one of the first things you notice with this car is when you approach a corner and you even start to turn the wheel in just a little bit, man, the front end just bites and turns in. And the chassis is just so wonderfully balanced, which of course, thank you BMW. And the back end sticks quite well. Like it's got so much poise, so much confidence, but it gives you options. If you want to understeer, it'll understeer. Oversteer, cool, no problem. It'll do it all, but it'll do it very predictably and it'll let you do it very comfortably. You can work with the car, you can play with it, you can have a nice little gentle waltz, and the car will work with you on that. It's a very rewarding driving experience, very fun. It puts a smile on your face. When you get to drive a car like that, that really rewards the proper inputs and makes you feel good while doing it. But at the same token, it won't kill you if you make a mistake. So basically, I like to compare the Supra with like a Miata. It's essentially a Miata on steroids. The handling characteristics very much remind me of the Mazda Miata, but obviously you have a lot more power. The other thing I really like about this car, which adds to the whole sporty characteristic that some other cars don't necessarily have, is this tight cockpit feeling. It feels like you're in a fighter jet. It really hugs you. The whole car just gives you that cocoon feeling. Okay, let's try one lap with a little bit of pace in it this time. Not going for hot laps yet, but we're going to go a little faster. And let's start seeing what the Supra is like when you start kind of pushing it a little bit harder. Okay, not bad through corner one. It's pretty balanced. I can get on the throttle leaving it. That's good. Gotta say, the brakes in this car aren't bad, but they don't exactly instill confidence when you're really threshold braking into a corner. They just kind of give that little bit of hints that's just, I don't know if it's gonna stop you in time. Okay, nice rotation through three. Let's get through the complex here. Okay, now, whoops, there we go. Okay, car's working good through here. A little bit of rotation on the exit. Missed that curb. Awesome. Okay, let's put our faith in the brakes again. Okay, they didn't let me down. That's good. Okay. Not bad through six. That new concrete patch at six, though, I'll tell you, makes it a little trickier to get through there with some pace now. That concrete really upsets the car when you get that patch. Okay, good through here. Okay, let's get nice tight patience corner. Okay, likes patience, it gets to there pretty good. Let's try our high-speed corner through here. All right, not bad. So my initial reaction to driving the Supra on track today is, I like it. I really do. It's a very good sports car. And again, most of it is just the handling dynamic of the car. I really, really enjoy that about this car. It's very rewarding. It'll respond to your inputs quite well. It gives you options. You can understeer, oversteer very confidently. Again, the brakes I still don't feel super confident with, but the rest of the car, you feel very at home and natural driving it. It's a very nice, comfortable feeling at speed, and like I said, it instills confidence knowing that when you tell the car to do something, it'll do it, quite predictably in fact. So it's I like it. As good as the Supra is, what if a two-door German sports car with Toyota badging isn't to your taste? Maybe instead of bratwurst, you prefer a good old-fashioned ballpark Frank from Detroit, Michigan. This is the Shelby GT350, a Ford Mustang with a focus on track performance. With track-tuned Magna-Ride suspension, massive Brembo brakes, and a V8 engine that can rev over 8,000 RPM while producing 526 horsepower. This car offers a very compelling choice for someone who has $76,000 to spend on a track toy. I've obviously had the opportunity to drive the Shelby GT350 and the R variant before, and I have to admit, I absolutely fell in love with this car the first time I drove one, which is odd because I'm not a Mustang guy. I traditionally don't really like Mustangs. I'm a track guy. Mustangs predominantly aren't great track cars. Fantastic for quarter mile and other things for sure, but something about this Mustang is so different, and it feels like a race car on the track. Now it's interesting because you think about this being a Shelby. So Carroll Shelby obviously started modifying Mustangs back in, I believe, 1965 was the first model year of the Shelby GT350. And it was a stock Mustang that was fairly modified and for the purposes of winning races, plain and simple. Carroll Shelby wanted to go out and build a race car that could win. And he did. The car did very successfully for the classes it raced in at the time, and the car accomplished its goal. It was a very raw race car at the time. I've never had the opportunity to drive one. I'm certain it must be a fantastic driving experience. Probably scary too, but that's what makes it fun. Now in 2016, of course, this model of GT350 came out, and it changed the game up again. It goes back to what made the original 350 a race car. The car is set up for track use. The suspension is got really good track suspension. It's got the Magna-Ride, which obviously does very well on track. It's tuned for performance. Has a great Tremac 6-speed transmission in here. A manual too, which is super cool in a modern sports car because it's so hard to find now. So that's very exciting. Adds that raw race car, even vintage kind of feel to it. Now, of course, though, as cool as all those race bits are in this Mustang, lots of other cars out there certainly still have that. What makes this car so special, for me at least, is the engine. This, of course, has the Voodoo V8, as Ford calls it, which is kind of weird and spooky, but whatever. It's kind of a cool name. But the really neat thing about this is the flat plain crank V8. So basically what that means is it's like a Ferrari. That makes this into a race engine. And yeah, there's lots of technical stuff we can talk about that, but what it really does that matters the most to an enthusiast is the sound it makes. In fact, let me demonstrate. Oh God. I have driven lots of Shelbys on track. Thankfully my job allows me to do that. And yet, every time I get to drive one of these and rev it out to red line, it still puts a smile on my face like that. It's the engine, the character, and the power delivery, the sound. It is just so friggin' cool. Like, if you've never driven one of these cars, you have to. So now the handling part, obviously, it's actually very, very good. Yes, it's a very big car. It feels like a big car when you're driving it. It takes up a lot of space, but you know what? It's a Mustang and you gotta live with that stuff. But when you're hucking it through corners, it does everything so well. Magnetite suspension really, really sorts the car very well. I mean, I haven't even really pushed this thing yet, and already you can just feel the composure of this car, in my opinion, still is more so than the Supra. The Supra feels a little more light and playful, obviously. This car, not quite as much, but it feels so much more stable, more composed. But you can still throw it around, it'll still turn in, it'll still oversteer, it'll still have all this very dynamic characteristic to it, and you can still have fun with it in the corners, which again is kind of odd coming from a Mustang, but remember, this is a Shelby, a real Shelby, not the other stuff. And yes, Shelby owners, I know you're gonna kill me for that comment, but hey, that's how I feel about it. We're back on the straightaway, so we're gonna do the throttle punch one more time, just because we can. Oh, you can never, ever, ever get tired of that. It's fantastic. And the beauty of this engine is, I know I'm talking about the engine a lot, but that's my favorite part of the car, so is what it is. The engine is just amazing because where else can you get a modern sports car that has a high revving, naturally aspirated engine like this? Like GT3 and like, that's kind of it. This car is exciting to drive. It's rare, it's special, it makes all the right noises. I love this thing, I really, really do. And again, to say that about a Mustang, I think says a lot about how I feel about this car. So first off, I have to say that both those cars were awesome on track. Tons of fun, a great driving experience for sure, and this is coming from somebody who's driven a few cars, and they were both really fun. They definitely put a smile on my face, as we can see in the video. Everybody's seen the dyno videos of the Supra. It clearly makes a lot more power than Toyota claims. And I think you may see some things later in the episode which will allude to that fact. Obviously, completely different powertrain in the Mustang. For me, I'm a little more old school, so I really appreciate the high revving, naturally aspirated engine. I love the manual transmission. I think in the video at one point I talked about how you actually get to heel toe while braking in the corners, because like, where do you get to do that in a modern car nowadays, right? These two cars were still surprisingly equal in terms of performance, at least during the initial review anyway. I found them very similar in terms of kind of the pace they had and the way they felt around the track in a lot of ways. If we do a drag race with these two cars, who here thinks the Supra is going to be quicker than the Mustang? Hands up, anybody? Okay, we got some Supra fans in the audience. Okay, good. Okay, who here thinks the Mustang would win a drag race against the Supra? Ooh, a few more people. Oh, we have a Mustang audience. Okay. So, I guess then we should find out which car is actually faster in a drag race. Who here wants to see a drag race between these two cars? All right, good. To cue up the drag race, my best Vin Diesel. Smoke 'em. You can see the Supra definitely got a huge advantage off the launch. Supra had launch control. The Mustang, we just did a good old-fashioned kind of clutch dump, a little bit of slip. I hadn't launched a Mustang in a couple of years, so the first race I was kind of playing around, and clearly wasn't the best launch. Off the line, the Supra pulled, what, 3-4 car lengths, and the race was kind of decided at that point. I'm very competitive, and I don't like to lose, so for science, we decided to do another race. Definitely a closer finish, but unfortunately, still not close enough for the Mustang. So second launch, I definitely had a better feel for the car, was able to manage the wheel spin a bit better. Unfortunately, the Supra still did a really good launch, got away off the line. And again, the Mustang was starting to reel it in a little bit at top end, but again, it wasn't enough. Plus, the other thing worth noting is that the Supra, of course, has an automatic transmission and has more gears than the Mustang. You can really see in the video that there's a little bit of time lost between shifts again, so darn automatic transmission still winning it in the quarter mile. But the Mustang still has a lot more horsepower, so we decided to try a roll race. Yeah, Mustang, right guys? Yeah. I'm sure it was all driver, of course, right? So you can definitely see the difference from the roll race. The Supra kept up a lot better than I thought it would. I figured at top end, the Mustang has a lot more horsepower, but the Supra kept up, not bad, as you guys can see. So that's definitely a testament that the Supra clearly makes more horsepower than Toyota claimed. At the end of the day, when it comes down to pure horsepower and top speed, the Shelby wins it. Speaking of Mustangs, everybody's aware of how Mustangs always seem to have difficulty leaving parking lot car meets. I'm sure everybody has seen those YouTube videos. Here on Track Attack, we're all about science. So we decided to do a scientific experiment, and let's see if all those videos are actually true or if maybe not. Welcome to our Track Attack Cars and Coffee Challenge. In this segment, we're going to find out if you can leave a car meet in a Mustang and not crash while doing so. Do Mustangs crash because of poor suspension design, or is it just driver error? Or maybe the car gods just don't like Mustangs. Either way, we decided to gather the greatest scientific minds Track Attack has to offer. As you can see, we were scraping the bottom of the barrel for this one. First off, we decided to leave the parking lot test zone in the Toyota Supra. This car is not known for causing any drama while leaving car meets. However, it has been known to occasionally cause problems with Ferrari F355 owners. You'll notice that I used my turn signal to indicate my turn onto the street in proper legal fashion. How exciting! And now the Mustang. With a qualified driver behind the wheel, this should be as exciting as watching the grass grow. Oh look, I can see it growing! No, never mind. That was just the wind. No, you can cut it here. There's nothing to see here. No good footage. Trust me, you don't want this. So it looks like we're going to be taking resumes for a new editor for Track Attack. Please send your resumes to Track Attack Canada. As you can see, after our rigorous scientific experiment, you cannot leave a parking lot without crashing a Mustang. We have a white Mustang here instead of a black one, so there's a reason for that. So now that we know how the cars do in the quarter mile, let's find out how they do on the road course. And speaking of road course, we choose Toronto Motorsports Park as our home base. This is Toronto Motorsports Park, our testing grounds for everything automotive. Located in Cayuga, Ontario, Toronto Motorsports Park is a 3-kilometer road course with a little bit of everything. Starting with 2 long straights where horsepower can be unleashed, to fast corners where suspension, tires, and mechanical grip are paramount. And then the tight portions, where superb chassis balance reward drivers with precious tenths. Toronto Motorsports Park is a fantastic facility that is accessible to beginners and challenging enough for the most seasoned drivers. And now, the hot laps. First up, the Supra. Powering onto the straight with that silky smooth inline 6. Hard on the brakes for corner 1. Trying very hard to put the power down out of the corner onto that second straightaway. The Supra turned in so nicely for corner 2. The wonderful chassis really shined through the tight, twisty section on the infield. And trying to carry as much speed as I can around the last bend and back onto the straightaway and across the line. And here he comes screaming into the first lap with the Mustang. There's nothing as rewarding as the perfect heel toe while braking into a corner. Managing a little bit of oversteer in the process. The Mustang struggled to put the power down out of the corners. With the excess heat in the tires, the Shelby was really prone to understeer, having to get on the brakes a little bit earlier than usual, coming into, of all places, Mustang Alley. Carrying as much speed as I dared through the high-speed sweeper, trying to get on power early back onto the main straight towards the finish. Let's go over to our Sonax leaderboard. So here we're going to display the lap times from all the cars we've tested. We have the Supra first. Let's see what lap time the Supra did at Toronto Motorsports Park. Lap time is a 1:22.1. Next, we have the Mustang. Did the Mustang beat the Supra? Let's find out. The lap time is 1:21.9. As you can see, two very evenly matched cars. Two very different takes on performance, but at the end of the day, it seems like they both get the job done the same way. As you can see, the lap times were remarkably close. We have actually tested a Shelby before, me personally that is, and I've run much quicker times on that track with that particular vehicle. Now, the one thing worth noting is the temperature. It was a blisteringly hot day. The cars were definitely down in power down the straightaways. They were not hitting their usual top speeds. The really interesting thing was they're both running on street tires, and the tires were pretty much melting after the first lap. It was so hard to find grip in either car that day. After the first warm-up lap, in fact, like the hot lap was just that. It was a very hot lap. The tires just didn't have any grip. Couldn't get the power down out of the corners. ABS was kicking in super early in all the braking zones. You really had to really finesse the cars through the corners. It was a challenge doing those hot laps on that hot day. Nonetheless, both cars were still under similar conditions, and it still goes to show how both cars are definitely very evenly matched. For about $70,000, we've decided these are both excellent sports cars. The Supra obviously brings a lot of fun and handling characteristic to the game. The Mustang is very raw and muscly. Both excellent cars, both a very good match in terms of performance. But the question is, at the end of the day, which car would I choose and why? Well, even though I'm not a Mustang guy, I am going with the Mustang. Yes, I know, it's Colin, it's a Mustang. But the Shelby's different. The Shelby has so much character and so much soul. It's just so exciting and so fun to drive. Don't get me wrong, the Supra was a blast. I love it. It's an excellent sports car. Like I mentioned before, great handling characteristics, lots of power, but it is lacking a little bit of that character and soul that the Mustang is just simply oozing with that super high revving V8 just screaming behind you. It just wins every day. Thank you so much for watching and sharing the exciting video. Now, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. You definitely don't want to miss the next episode where we are going to be featuring a full lineup of cars from one of the most iconic automotive brands out there. See you at the track.